BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
What you're about to hear is the finest way we've ever warned you that the following podcast contains some naughty words and adult themes.
Run, come gather round. Who goes there? It's Tom, Starkey, Peter Crouch. Podcast business. NEATMC, oh my God. The best podcast in the world, Tom Starkey and Peter Crouch. The best podcast in the world, Tom Starkey and Peter Crouch. The best podcast in the world, Tom Starkey and Peter Crouch. The best podcast in the world, Tom Starkey and Peter Crouch. Got Peter Crouch, I drop it with the banter and the laughs. Tom and Starkey drop it with the bad podcast. Bad podcast, bad podcast, bad pod, bad pod, bad podcast. All with the bad language, 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 all with the podcast.
Oh my God, that is epic.
What? That's how to do a swear warning, isn't it? Fiona Bruce 1 week, MC Neat the next.
Don't know if I'm supposed to say that.
We've just broken down the technicalities of picking balls out of a bowl.
I'll give you the option now, Crouchy, that you could live to 100. Would you go for it?
Make my way downtown, just domes and homebound.
Vanessa Carlton!
Bex has sent you a message. Ed Sheeran's written you a song, but Mr. Islam said happy birthday. That's the real win.
Vanuatu, 166th in the world.
God, who do I go with this?
You're going to have to say something quickly.
Hello and welcome to another episode of That Peter Crouch podcast with me, Peter Crouch, Tom Fordyce and Chris Stark with me as usual. You okay, boys?
All the better for being back on a pod, Crouchy. Chris, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Excited to get on with this podcast, actually. I think Entourage is a good topic because I've met some of your friends now, Crouchy, and we've met some of your family, me and Tom, but I think it's going to be fascinating learning about this sort of Crouchy crew that has brought you through. It's going to be a good one.
It's tough, certainly for a young player, because you don't know where to turn. All of a sudden, you go from school to earning good money, and all these people are sort of there to hang on a little bit, and it's up to you to decipher through them really, and work out who's got your best interests at heart.
But first, can I just speak a bit of podcast business?
For sure.
Yeah, love to.
You know those apps you can get when you do running or you do cycling and it sort of shows you the route that you've done and you can...
Yeah.
I mean, you can draw images.
Well, someone drew me, didn't they? Someone was drawing me. I've had plenty of penises, plenty of penis messages,
Right. Okay,
of people running. Of people running and drawing out penises.
Just thought that you might want to clarify that one. As you were, Chris.
Yeah. So we did lay down a challenge, which was if you can spell out Mike Dean Slaughter's chickens on the route, you get extra points, extra credit from us. And boys, I'm so pleased to report that someone's risen to the challenge. We've had a couple. Dan Cutler in Edinburgh, massive props to you. Crouchy, do you want to talk through his attempt there, which looks like it's all done in one park?
Yeah, he's used the park to its full potential there, just off Melville Drive, and he's spelt out quite well, I think.
Do you think if we didn't know he was spelling out Mike Dean Slaughter's chickens, what are you reading it as? And this isn't me knocking the effort because it is a superb effort.
Yeah, it's very impressive. And what I like about these as well, you sort of see where their route started. And I like to imagine that this guy has left his family home. He's gone for his allocated bit of exercise. I'll see you in a bit, Mum. He's got to bash out a quick Mike Dean Slaughter's chickens in the local park. And by the way, he must look mental running like that. Because if you think...
That's the thing, Chris.
Like
if you're in that park and you're playing football or you're taking your dog for a walk, what are you thinking? This man's lost his mind.
It makes no sense, does it? I wish we could have strapped a camera to you, Dan. Maybe there's still time. And then there's another one I'm just sending through here. Now, this was done more in a straight line. This one is courtesy of Christopher with a K. So this guy's already got a bit of character. Christopher Allison in Teesside. I think he's done a good job there.
Wow.
Can I just read what he accompanies with this with, just to give you a little bit of background on Christopher? This took me about 40 minutes. I followed a practice run in my local park where I ran out of room. So the only space of land that I could work with was outside the local prison. I had to climb into bushes and through water in order to make the shape of the letters.
No.
He's gone through marshland to finally get in Slaughter's Chickens, and it's outside of a prison.
Imagine being inside that prison, Chris, and you're in your cell and you're staring out through the bars, and you see a man running straight through water, running straight through bushes, and then you find yourself thinking, is he sending me a message?
It looks really hard to do. So maybe we just jump on the penises and just, you know what
So
I
to
mean? Like
speak,
just embrace them.
You run out, you just do a little loop at the top. Yeah, that's a lovely one. Crouch, you've just shown us one on your phone there. That's the classic phallus we're seeing there.
It's simply done.
It's simply done. They've got everything except the dotted line and the pubes. Like, it'd be good if you could jump out a dotted line just at the end of it, the finish. That would be the dream.
How do you do them though? You got to jump. You literally do a long jump.
Do you want to know what the strangest job in sport is, boys? There's a little bit of cycling chat for you, but I think you're going to like this. So when they do the Tour de France, you might be familiar with the way that fans write the name of their hero, or they might draw something. What tends to happen is that people on the route will have a few beers the night before and decide to draw a giant cock and balls on the road. So there is a team of people at the Tour de France whose job it is to drive the route ahead of the race, and they have to turn the cock and balls into the body of a butterfly. So if you ever watch the Tour de France and you wonder why there is a series of butterfly motifs along the road, they used to be cock and balls and now they're beautiful butterflies.
That's a great fact.
Wow.
It's good knowing the French are into it as well, because I always thought it was just a British thing.
Boys, we've had a message. Obviously, we've been talking about Vanessa Carlton quite a lot. We've had a message on social media from Old Dabo. Considering the end of lockdown will be at the same time as the Euros, would you boys record a version of 1,000 Miles as a Euros anthem?
Yeah, I like that. That's good. Oh, the bowl's onto something there.
I think it's good. Like, I think the problem comes when people try and make a Euros anthem. So I would say, wouldn't it be amazing if, say, 1,000 Miles, because of this podcast, when you can get into a pub, it's the first song you put on the jukebox. That kind of thing. Like, we get the song out.
Organic is what we're saying.
Yeah.
And there's sort of no reason why. It's just on.
I think it's like if I walked into a bar and someone put Vanessa Carlton on the jukebox, they listen to the podcast. It's a way of passing the pod.
Connection.
If that tune does come on and you get a little knowing look from across the room, like, you listen.
Hey, Tom, one other bit of business. On the last podcast, you were talking about Kante on a scooter.
Yes.
And I think you were being quite negative about him. Well, I received a message from someone convinced that they spotted you on a scooter.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
Right. So this is true. So you're a scooter yourself, are you?
Sometimes you want to go faster than a walking pace, but you don't want to get dressed up on your bike, so you need a sort of happy medium.
Well, I don't know. I've had a go on my little girl's got one. She's got one of the electric ones, and they're very fast and they're very fun. So I do get it, but I don't know. I'm not sure about getting from A to B on a scooter over the age of 15.
There's question marks. Crouchy, very quickly, the MC Neat bit at the start there, you were loving that. I was watching your little face whilst that was on. That was a good one.
I mean, just for them, honestly, I absolutely loved it. I've played it to loads of people that I grew up with, my sister, everyone. They were like, they just can't believe it. I thought it was incredible.
Boys, just one final bit of business. I just want to kind of bring you up to speed with what's going on in my head of advertising role. Great. Everyone's been amazing with this, passing the pod. I don't know if you saw Warren Rich's video after your appeal in the last podcast, Crouchy. Warren Rich has appeared with another one of his, almost Netflix style promo videos.
It's serious stuff. I mean, if anyone's come back stronger, it's Warren Rich's.
Absolutely. But bit of good news to share. So I've managed to get my hands on a billboard to help advertise the podcast.
You mean an actual billboard in the street billboard?
It's a massive billboard. I got a very good deal on it.
You got one billboard? Yeah,
so but it's in a great location. It's
you're fucking better be.
It's so in London, place called Bond Street.
The Bond Street where all the shops are shut and no one's going.
Right. So what's happened here is I was looking at ways to advertise and then found someone that's a big fan of the podcast. He said he would give us the billboard. So I've struck a sort of deal with him. And it means we've got the one billboard. But the good news is we can kind of do whatever we want with it. The bad news is we haven't really got kind of resources around us to put something proper together. So it can be kind of left to us.
Okay. So what do we need?
So listen, the bloke's a big fan of the podcast.
Okay. Well, yeah, listen, we can't. He's passing the pod.
His idea is that, Crouchy, you draw something for the billboard. So rather than a like glossy advert, you just smash something out on a bit of paper and then it will get turned into a massive billboard. And that's what appealed to me, because all other adverts, there's a lot of podcasts out there and it's kind of samey, the adverts.
Well, I don't know. Listen, we could be groundbreaking. And I think we've seen some of my my artistic skills with the moat that I drew of my house. With the
What a moat that was.
I can draw. You've seen that. I'm happy to do it. I'll be back. I'm happy. Do you want me to do a sketch or do you want to just go with the moat?
We could just go with the moat. I mean, basically, we've got a week to get this sorted. So you can either come up with something better, but I think it's good to have in the back pocket, knowing that we could just put the moat picture that you did. You're becoming famous for your drawings, and then I'll get it put into the billboard.
Right, no worries, mate. Listen, I'll draw it next week, and we'll bang. I'll show it to you in the pod next week.
Sweet.
Right, boys, on with the show.
That Peter Crouch podcast from BBC 5 Live.
Family's a great place to start with this, right? Because they're with you at the start of this journey.
Family members, 100%. You always want to look after them, but also friends as well. Like, I still got my pals from school, and I feel very lucky to have that. Really, I've got 5 or 6 mates that I've known since I was 6, 7 years old. And yeah, there's been perks where I've brought them along to things. They've been to big games. They've been to some good parties. They've been on some great holidays with me. They're the people that you want to share it with. And this is part and parcel of starting with the entourage, if you like. But my dad obviously didn't miss a game. He'd always sit in the same seat, and he wouldn't say who he was, but he'd always be sitting around the same people. And they worked out very quickly how excited he got when I got near to scoring who he was. But he often built up a big rapport with the person sitting next to him. And I know when I moved on clubs, he was sad to see a couple of those people go.
There must be stuff he's heard that he hasn't told you about. But it must be awkward at times also.
I've seen it go off so many times where, like a father of someone who's on the bench would say, how the hell is he playing ahead of my boy, useless, he's this and he's that. And my dad's turned around and, said in no uncertain terms, it's because he's shit. So yeah, listen, it can get quite heated up there because everyone wants their family member or their friend to be playing. If you go to a match, if you come and watch me, play for England, and I'm on the bench, you want to see me come on, don't you? You want to see me play. So,
we had that team Stoke, Tom, didn't we? We wanted to see him play. And I remember afterwards, I wouldn't say you were embarrassed, but I think you wanted us to see you play. Do you know what I mean?
Because I think Stoke were 1 up against Swansea, and it wasn't a great time
Tuesday night,
for
wasn't
Stoke. It was Tuesday night. It was smashing it down with rain. So when you've come on, there's a smattering of applause, apart from one very small section behind the main stand, where you've got 2 blokes leaping around. Come on, Crouchy! Giving it the full beans.
You got the full experience then of the Tuesday night in Stoke.
It was great, wasn't it, Tom? We were the entourage. Admittedly, neither of us can confess to quite being Clancy, but we did get a small glimmer of what it was like to be here.
in that world, we did. And it sounds to me, Chris, a bit like we've got 2. When we say entourage, we almost need to split this into 2. Because we've got like the good side of the entourage, which is your family and your mates. And then we've got what we might consider the more negative side of it, which is hangers-on. There's never a good hanger-on, is there?
Do you know what people do? Certainly, like at the top level that I've seen, people surround themselves with people they can trust. And I think trust is such an important word to a footballer because there's so many people that sort of want. It feels like they're out to get you a little bit. Like someone who wants you to trip up or a little bit of jealousy. People come and go, but I think there'll always be someone very close to a footballer that they can trust. someone around the scene, and sometimes they're on the payroll. You know, sometimes you just give them sort of mundane jobs to do. There was a period in my life when I lived in Surrey and I was playing for Portsmouth, and it used to take me sort of an hour to drive down there. My mate was out of work, Julesy, and he drove for me. You know, he's out of work and he needed a few quid, and I needed a driver so I could be fresh for training. And I always remember he turned up for his first day. He turned up with a full suit with a chauffeur's hat on and the white gloves. And he made me sit in the back for the first trip. He drove fully down, and people took him seriously. Like, he went into the canteen and he kept the gear on for the whole time he was down there. And people just assumed that he was my chauffeur, and he was just my pal from school.
I think this happens quite a lot, doesn't it, with footballers employing friends to drive them distances. I guess it's a kind of easy job you can give a mate. It helps them out. They get a few quid. They get to have a bit of a laugh as well. It's a nice job to have.
Have I ever told you about the pigeon story at Portsmouth?
Hang on a second.
This sounds good already.
Yeah, so on this one occasion where Julesy was driving me down to Portsmouth, just the pitfalls really of properly driving with your mate. But we saw this group of pigeons, and I saw a few feathers, but I didn't think anything of it. Because I looked down, and they were all flying off. Thought nothing of it. We've pinged down the M3. We've got to training. We've drove back. He's dropped me off, and then he's gone to Ealing, where he lives. And the cat was going mad around his bonnet. Didn't think anything of it. Got the cat off the bonnet. Picked me up again. We pinged down the M3 again and got to the training ground and realised that this pigeon, it had somehow gone through the grill and it was alive now, right? So this pigeon's alive. This pigeon's done 2 trips to Portsmouth and back.
Like
in the
so
grill.
It's behind the radiator grill, like he's in a little pigeon jail.
Yeah. Honestly, can you imagine the G-force down the M3 on this pigeon? And anyway, we've panicked. You know, I felt terrible for it. We got the AA out. He took the grill off. We must have 50 people watching this, staff, players, everyone there. This pigeon has come out the grill, gone up. He's gone so high. It's flying. The cheer was like, yes! And then it just went like that and just nosedived. Dead pigeon.
What?
Yeah.
What's happened there? Because it's done the hard work and it feels like it's just gone on the last bit there. It's crash landed.
I mean, it's been on a roller coaster for like basically 3 hours, isn't it?
What was it? The shock of being at the Portsmouth training ground? Like what?
We had a good side at the time. I think he'd have enjoyed training.
When it plummeted to earth, did it plummet to earth on the training ground, or did it just clear like a nearby building or a hedge? I mean, the question I'm asking here, Chris, is whether Crouchy, you were able to go over and cradle it in your arms and just maybe whisper a few things into it. Do they have ears, pigeons?
Peck stronger.
Something like that.
Peck stronger.
Peck stronger, sweet pigeon. What?
Goodbye, little guy.
Whilst we're talking about it, what is the rule with pets at the training ground? So if the pigeons, say, had made it, have you ever been part of a team that have had a sort of team pet?
Dave Kemp, who's Tony Pulis's assistant, used to look after like rescue dogs, or I don't know what he used to do, but every now and then he'd have a different dog, and he'd bring it to the training ground, and we'd be out training, and we'd look over to one of the far pitches, and he'd just be walking like a Labrador or something. What is going on? We're a Premier League outfit.
It's a Premier League team. Keys is just walking a dog around the pitch.
Crouch going for the spectacular. Oh, what a goal from Peter Crouch!
That Peter Crouch podcast from BBC 5 Live.
So what about your mate? So your mate would drive you to this. You've had the pigeon incident and stuff like that. Is it then tricky when you have to let a friend go from their duties?
Yeah, that was difficult because actually he really enjoyed his job, because there was Glenn Johnson and Sean Davis. They lived quite near me. Sam Taylor used to drive for Glenn Johnson, and Panda used to drive for Sean Davis. And the Panda and Julesy and Sam, they used to, when they got down to Portsmouth, we'd obviously train, so they'd go to the driving range, or they'd go into the canteen and have a table tennis comp. And I remember a couple of times, Julesy and Sam started going bowling, and they got really good, and like they bought their own balls and stuff like that.
Oh, that's always a sign.
Yeah, it was a great job, really. You know, they were out of work, and you know they were nicking a few quid off us. That you know we were you know, it's a mutually beneficial arrangement. It was good fun, and you know they became great at the old bowling.
Tricky one for them to price as well. Like, I assume that they're earning good money out of you and other players. I mean, they were probably doing better than any other taxi driver out there, right?
Yeah. And yeah, that is a difficult one. But I mean, Jules is a fireman now, got a good career, but he just wasn't working at the time, and it was sort of helpful for me and helpful for him. And you know, when I think I moved clubs and just didn't need him again, but. He was all good. He was okay about it.
I love the idea, Chris, that Julesy has now on his CV, like when he's applying for a completely different job, it just says, you know, years 2003 to 2004, chauffeur to Peter Crouch.
Yeah, really formalises it.
Yeah. Do you know one of his other claims to fame? He scored a penalty against Mourinho. Obviously, he's a fireman. You know, a lot of his friends and stuff, they were all in the horrendous thing that happened in the Grenfell Tower. So I played in the game for Grenfell at QPR, and it was for a great cause. But Mourinho was in goal, and a couple of the firemen played. I managed to pull some strings, and I got Julesy to play. And Mourinho was in goal, and it went to a penalty shootout, and Julesy scored a pen and performed the robot.
Oh, you've got a funny little relationship with Mourinho. Just as a side note, I keep hearing, and I know there was all that stuff when you were supposedly going to get transferred for him. But you just keep popping up in each other's lives, don't you?
That transfer stuff, it was like a joke, wasn't it? Saying like he was going to ask me to get my boots on again and stuff like that. And it was funny because I was watching that interview live, and my phone rang, and I didn't know the number, and it was a FaceTime, and I answered it, and it was Mourinho, and he was standing there. I'd literally just watched him come off the back of this press conference, and then I'm FaceTiming him in the same sort of position he was in, and he was like, "You fancy it?" And I was like, 100% I fancy it, of course. And then unfortunately he started laughing.
I just get a vibe that he actually likes you.
Well, I've always got that vibe. You know, whenever I've sort of come across him, he's been great. And that game for Grenfell where he went in goal, he was amazing and a real good sport.
Ledley King's on the staff, isn't he?
He is, yeah.
Surely, yeah, he can put a word in for you. Or maybe he does already.
I'm happy dicking around with you two.
Fair enough. But you know what? It brings us to the next point of the entourage, which is, and maybe linked to Mourinho slightly, is obviously you need. I'm imagining it, Tom. You know, like the TV show Entourage, where you've got a couple of mates.
Very much so.
Then you need an agent as well. Agent's an important part of the entourage or your management or whatever it is. Would you agree?
Yeah, of course. I mean, the agent. You know, I've been with the same agent since I was 14. I always felt that my dad was sort of the go-between between the sort of agents and people that were sort of circling. And my dad was sort of the person that I could always trust, and he was quite savvy as well. But not every player has that, so I can understand why people maybe are on the sort of payroll that shouldn't be. And also there's, you know, an entourage of people that you sort of pick up. I mean, like Mario Balotelli, for instance, he wasn't in Manchester long, but I used to live, you know, not far from him and see him about. And there was a club at sort of like almost the end of our road. You know, quite often I'd see him in there. And I think I was in there one night after a game, and it was quite quiet. And then he came in, and I'm not joking, it was like you couldn't move. You literally couldn't move. It was packed. And I was thinking, whoa, this has got busy all of a sudden. And then he left about half an hour later, and it just went dead again. That wave of people that came in was actually his entourage. It was literally the people with him.
Amazing.
Which was crazy, you know. I mean, how you pick up that many people. And I was thinking, like, a lot of these people were Mancunians and people that I sort of half knew from being out and about. I was thinking, you know, they can't be his mates like straight away.
You know, you can judge someone by the quality of their friends sometimes. So that night in the Samrat, Chris, we met Crouchy's mates, and Chris, I met some of your boys as well. You can tell a lot about someone by their mates. So poor old Mario there, I almost feel a bit sorry for him because he's obviously a bit lonely there in Audley Edge, and he's a long way from home. It's not working out brilliantly for him at City. And then he's got all these people hanging around him and they're not really his mates.
Yeah, but as Crouchy says, he's in a quiet club, right? Now, Balotelli, he's never in a situation where he's on a dead night. It's quite a clever way of always ensuring that the place is bouncing, you know? I'm wondering what he does here. I mean, if whose job is that? Is that an agent's job now, or is it a player liaison officer? Like, who organises the minibus of Mancunians to arrive at the nightclub? It's a cracking job.
Dave, I'll pick you up at 8, Dave.
There's always someone's, like a social person. But listen, everything that happens with a footballer, buying a house, going on a holiday, you just go on the advice of sort of other players or players who've been at a club for a long time, or, a player liaison officer, as you mentioned. And a player liaison officer is so important to players, because you've got to get someone up and running quickly so they can settle and play good football. Because if you're a foreign player coming over to England, they've got to go into a scenario, they've got to get a flat or a house, depending if they've got a family, very, very quickly, get a phone, get some internet in their house, because otherwise they'd be bored stiff. Sky or whatever TV they want. So yeah, like the player liaison is so important, but they know that they've got a lot of money to spend. So how many developers of housing projects or flats do you think are trying to get into the player liaison officer to say, can you recommend my new development? And how many of them are saying cars, send him to, he needs a car straight away. And quite often it's a nice car. So, there's so many factors and pitfalls that you've got to worry about. And it's a difficult one to navigate.
There's some amazing stories, Chris, aren't they, of some of the things that player liaison officers at clubs have had to do. Now, I don't know if some of these are urban myths, but Crouchy, maybe we can run a couple past you. There's one which apparently happened at Manchester City. A player phoned the player liaison officer wanting the player liaison officer to walk their golden retriever, and they stipulated that the golden retriever, quote, only spoke French.
Where have you got that one from?
Carlos Tevez paid someone to open his post for him. Crouchy, does that seem likely?
100%. 100%. I've done it myself. When you move house and you don't change your mail and things like that, like stupid things that only a footballer would do. I've done it myself.
Do you remember that the old Fulham defender, Alain Goma, right? He apparently once called the Fulham player liaison officer very concerned because, quote, his goldfish was swimming the wrong way round.
Shut up. I'm not having that. It can't be true.
How about this one? Phil Neville never made a cup of tea until after he retired, age 37. I've got a quote from him as well. He says, "My heart sank because I thought, how do I do that? I ran into the kitchen and thought, I'm not going to poison this guy, so I rang my wife."
So many incredible stories of some ridiculous things. There was one player that I heard, I don't know if this is true or not, it was just something I heard on the grapevine, that the player liaison officer went round to his house and his heating had broke about 2 months previous, and he just sat there in a coat in the evenings.
What?
So is the player liaison officer, what's their kind of, in a training ground scenario, where are they?
A lot of players will be friendly with player liaison, and you can go in there and you can take a bill or something, a summons from court because you haven't paid a phone bill or something, and you go in there and you go like, what the hell's this? Like, how can you deal with this? Like, what the hell? What's going on? It's the hub really of the training ground. It'd be near the manager's office, and they'd be organising anything from team dues, Christmas parties. You want to get things boxed off, then
yeah, but that's all nice. What is it that they will do for you that like pushes the boundaries of this? Like, is it like anything? Is it breaking up with girlfriends? Is it like what? I'm just trying to establish kind of their character, but also the limits of their job.
I don't think there's any limits, really.
Really? That's insane.
You could get them to split up with a girl for you.
Well, it's you could ask the question, couldn't you? The way the modern game is now is, everything is geared up so you play well on a Saturday. And if there's any distractions or any problems, clubs will try and take those problems away from you. Ultimately, your goal is to go there and play well. So, if there's anything off the pitch that's difficult for you, i.e., splitting up with a girlfriend, I think that comes into the under the category.
Chris, imagine being dumped by a player liaison officer. Imagine that
There'll be
conversation.
someone listening, I really want to hear from someone that's been dumped via player liaison. Like, there must be one.
Or from the player liaison officer who had to dump someone on behalf of a footballer.
Yeah.
How that conversation went.
But the player liaison officer, are they sort of, can you confide in them? So if they're doing this sort of dirty work for you, can you confide in them, or do they report to the manager?
This is a serious pitfall. Ultimately, they are paid by the club, and their club is their employer, not you. They would have to report back to the manager, and I don't think that any of your antics would be a secret. But listen, I've met some great ones though, like some really like top fellas who I would trust. Like I've been out for a beer with them, and they're always good value. But I think you ultimately have to remember that they're hired by the football club.
So we're not using the word snitch, but that's certainly what we're implying.
Yeah, but they're doing a job for the manager, aren't they? Because as Crouchy saying, basically the manager doesn't want the player distracted. So if someone needs letting down, it's been a few dates in, they're getting a bit clingy, they need to get rid of. Pep's not going to go and do that, is he? Mourinho isn't going and letting down that girl. Although that would be amazing if the remit of the manager
would be amazing.
Just imagine being dumped by one of those guys. I'd like to be dumped by Roy Hodgson. That would be my manager of choice. It would just
Hodgson would dump you in a way that you wouldn't really know you were being dumped. Do you know what I mean? Because he's a very nice man. He wouldn't be able to say to you, Chris, it's all over.
Yeah.
He'd try and find euphemisms. I just think there's, you're moving in different directions.
Exactly.
What are you saying, Brett? Have I got a choice? Have I got a hope here, Roy?
I think I'd like to be dumped by Brendan Rodgers. I feel like he'd, explain your strengths rather than your weaknesses, and you will be someone's special one day.
He's got the psychology patter, hasn't he? You'll come away actually feeling weirdly positive, I think.
He'd go through my strengths and he'd tell me how, what a good person I was, and I think he'd really build me up, even though he's letting me go.
Who are the other good ones then? If you had to be dumped by a Premier League manager, I mean, I like to think that Steve Bruce would be quite paternal about it. He'd put his arm around your shoulder. Listen, Chris, you've had a cracking run. You've been out with her for 5 wonderful weeks, and you've had 3 dates. You've got some lovely photos, but it's over. And I know we all wish it wasn't, but it's over. And you'll move on. You'll find another one, Chris. And here's a tissue for your tears.
I think it'd be good to a point, because then I think you see it in the press conferences now. It's I'm not talking about this anymore.
Chris Wilder wouldn't be pretty, would it?
No. But
I know that, say Neymar signs for Man City tomorrow, straight away, within the first few days, Pep will be speaking to the player liaison officer, say, look, is he sorted? Has he got a place to stay, a car? What can we get him from the training ground? Like, it's all about getting him settled as quickly as possible so he can concentrate on football.
If you, Crouchy, were moving, let's say you had got a move to a Spanish club, what was the club? Did you nearly go to Villarreal at one point? What was the club?
Did you?
I think it was Villarreal. I think that was on the cards, and I had another one later on in life. Was in Italy, Sampdoria and Torino.
Oh.
I remember speaking to Graham Souness actually about it, because I was on holiday and he was there, and we ended up playing a round of golf together, and it was brilliant, and it was amazing picking his brains about Italy. Just chatting to him, obviously spent a lot of time and loved it. And in that Liverpool dressing room, I remember asking Pepe Reina and Xabi Alonso, and they loved Villarreal. They said it's a great place to live, great place to. And listen, you go on players' advice, don't you?
But if they had happened, you would have needed the full platinum package from the Villarreal player liaison officer.
Certainly for me with the language. I mean, I'd get by because my Spanish is very, very good, as you know. But exactly. I feel for the other ones who aren't as fluent as me. If I bowled into a restaurant, I'd be quite comfortable saying, una paella, por favor.
Yeah, you don't need a player liaison officer there, do you? You're
no, they're going to come back at me and say, it's for dos, and I'll say, no, uno paella. I know it's for dos, but just uno paella. It's,
No.
no matter what language you're in, mate, you can't get a paella if you're just one person.
I still think as a podcast, we're going to earn our millions through selling the one-person paella.
Yeah, that's our breakthrough, isn't it?
There's a market out there.
That's what you're going to do. You're going to change the game. The one-person paella. Paella for one. There's a snappier name, I'm sure. Uno paella.
Uno paella.
We're going to get it in Iceland en masse.
Iceland?
In goes Crouch, and it's there! And Peter Crouch scores for England.
That Peter Crouch podcast from BBC 5 Live.
Just kind of moving around the Entourage setup here. I thought we could have a little chat about hangers-on. So we've sort of talked about it from a friend or sort of people that you've grown up with, or people that you know scenario. And then you've sort of got what I think I see out there sometimes, which is professional hangers-on. Who's the one that is with Stevie G? You'll know, Tom.
Is this Gratty?
Gratty, that's it, yeah.
Yeah, it's top lad. Yeah, there's a group of people that definitely like are around Stevie, and that like his pals from home, and Gratty's one of them.
And I guess as well, like when people become teammates of yours, do you inherit their mates as well to a certain extent? Like it sounds like players that you were playing with were having to suddenly kind of deal with, you know, your lads playing table tennis and knocking about the place. Like, does that sort of thing happen?
Yeah, definitely, 100%. Because when you go out, you do have to get on with their mates as well, and the reverse of that as well. You know, players' girlfriends and wives. You know, when you have sort of team evenings out and with the girlfriends, they're all straight involved as well. So yeah, it's a strange one. And then I don't know how to put this really, but like say a foreign player, they might not know the crack. Do you know what I mean? And they might not know, shall we say?
Well,
they might not know the girls that are perhaps on the scene that that other footballers know.
I see what you're saying. The sociable ones.
Yeah, ones that perhaps other footballers have seen, and then obviously they might bring them to a team do as a girlfriend.
Has that happened? Amazing.
Yeah, I think it's there's a lot of panic ensues, and then telling of can we never see this person again, please?
The player liaison officer steps in and dumps them.
Classic. Your classic PLO dumping.
I have to get Steve Bruce in again. Let me fire this question at you, boys. If you were going to be a hanger-on, who would you hang off the back of?
I don't know, because there's so many different answers for different reasons. Like Roy Keane's an enigma, isn't he? But you just know that'd be a cracking sort of fishing trip or something. If he liked you, there'd be.
He took you inside his inner circle.
I think you hit on the word earlier. I think when you said trust, I think that's the thing with all of it.
I was naive. I was too trusting, probably in my early days, and this is something that you have to be so guarded. And everyone, if you look at footballers today or whenever, everyone's just so guarded, aren't they? Because it's hard to trust people. It's hard to relax and be yourself in front of someone new, if you like. I sit here now because I'm comfortable with you boys here now, and I'm comfortable with everyone on this podcast. And I think that's why sort of we get some good stuff, because I'm comfortable sitting here chatting to you. But if someone new pops up on this podcast here now, I'd be like, well, I'm not really comfortable with that. And I think the podcast would suffer because I wouldn't be as open. It's hard and I think because I've got older now, I can see these people a lot sooner. But when you're 19, 20, I was too trusting, 100%. I was too trusting, which is sad to say, but I'd just be myself in front of absolutely anyone. And then you get burnt and you think, I need to be a bit more careful. And, you get burnt again.
It is interesting that you do trust this situation a lot more now for how you talk. And equally, I think it's reflected in, we get more emails than ever from people that want to share their stories and their experiences with this podcast as well. And, I think it's fair to say we don't take that for granted either. And it is something that can only come with time and trust. And I think it's those two things, right, which sort of sum up this episode.
Yeah, well, I'll be perfectly honest with you. When I first started this podcast, I was quite open about what I was talking about because I didn't think anyone would listen to it. But I'm glad I did, because it wouldn't be what it is today if I was sitting on the fence. I just love doing it.
And I think people do reciprocate that. You see the messages that come from people to this podcast, like it's rare, and the people that contact us on social media, and I really like that there is that atmosphere with this now where you feel safe and people who listen to this feel safe.
Yeah, so we are.
I'm just wondering, boys, like we've heard some amazing things that the player liaison officers can do. I just wonder if they need what we might term the ultimate test. So we've talked about the challenge that we've laid out to us on this pod.
Just to confirm the challenges as we kind of have it here, because none of us have any progress to report. Tom, you getting Kim Jong-un, Crouchy, you getting the original Ronaldo, or me getting Elton John to appear on this podcast. But there is very much, the ambition is there. And if anyone has listened to this and can help us, be much appreciated. I think that's fair to say, right, boys?
I'm just wondering if we can challenge the nation's player liaison officers. If they can do all the things that we've heard of, then which player liaison officer in the country could get one of those sorted out first?
I know some people that would know the player liaison at Real Madrid. Gareth Bale, for instance, or Steve McManaman. So I feel like that's potentially Ronaldo. But Kim Jong-un, I am at a loss. But wait, he might listen.
It's definitely possible.
Don't know what goes on.
Don't rule anything out, guys. Don't rule anything out. I keep saying this to you boys. Like, any idea, it goes for everyone listening to this as well. Let's not rule anything out. We had MC Neat performing at the start of this podcast. What's stopping us getting Elton John?
Yeah. I feel like you've set yourself a big one there, though, Tom. Good luck with that.
Never say never. Right, a couple of emails we've got time for. Should we kick these off?
It's an interesting one, Chris. I don't know if you want to read this one.
I've had a brief little look.
I've not read it.
Just read it.
Yeah, please. Please read on.
Taking inspiration from your first pod of the series, I decided to ask the wife to dress up as Chris Stark for a night of debauchery. Unfortunately, she did not seem to resemble you, Chris, but rather just a woman in a plain t-shirt and jeans. We thought of ways to improve the look, but it seems as though you have an absence of any particularly distinguishable features. I don't really know what to say to that.
Maybe could you offer a few steers, like a few little tips for the start?
Like a Watford shirt or something.
Yeah, we're skirting over the heart of the matter. The heart of the matter is here. Why is he making his wife dress up as Chris Stark?
Well, not at all. No, I do take it as a compliment that you'd like your wife to dress up as me.
Chris, do you have any distinguishing features that we might not be aware of, like a prominent mole or a tattoo or anything like that people?
But that's what I mean. And I guess what Alex has shown here is that if you do, and this goes for anyone listening, you Crouchy and Tom, if you do want your wife to dress up as me, it's really hard to do because there's nothing about me. Everything is just ever so slightly below average. This is the thing. If either of you to describe me as
I'm just thinking
like
that,
me now, there's nothing, is there? I mean, there isn't one redeeming or standout feature.
No, I think
I'm background noise.
I think you're doing yourself a disservice there. But I
agree.
I get what you're saying. Like
I'm sort of the non-man.
But do you know I've got a mate who's called Background Boy. He looks quite similar, like to Chris. There's no real sort of like nothing you really pick out. But also on a night out, you don't really know he's there. He'll just fire into the group.
Mate, every friendship group's got one. We had Corner Man in our group.
Corner Man. What? Corner Man and Background Boy on a night.
Can people, Chris, you're right. Everyone has got a background boy or a corner man in their group.
Yeah, I love it because it just celebrates the underdog in the best possible way. We're going to lay on a night. It's like the bottom feeders of the pub. They're your mates, but they offer very little, and they're just there. It's like
it's a bit of a nightmare, isn't it? If I was Background Boy or Corner Man, like around sort of 11ish, I'd just take all my gear off and like dive behind the bar or something like that. At least they remembered me for something.
The reason you said that, Crouchy, you've just put your finger accidentally on why you're not ever going to be background boy or corner man, whereas background boy is quite happy being background boy. You know, that is his niche.
It's good this episode, you're right. The entourage of mates. It will get people thinking about the roles in their friends as well. I like that.
That Peter Crouch podcast from BBC 5 Live.
Hi, it's MC Meat from DJ Like an MC Meat. Okay, Crouchy, we get to ask you a question, yeah? Can you book us and Majestic and some of our mates for a banging garage takeover at Crouch Fest 2 when we get going again?
Is he joking? Absolutely love him to play a little set at Crouch Fest 2. It's happening. It's going to be massive.
Well, do you know what? At this point as well, it'd be nice to shout out Majestic. Are you familiar with Majestic's work? He's one of these people, he's a big Spurs fan. He's one of these people that has sort of been on this scene for years and years, seems to know everyone. I like the idea of entrusting Majestic, Luck and Neat, Artful Dodger, garage set at Crouch Fest 2. It could be awesome, couldn't it?
Yeah, can't they just be the resident DJs for the evening? If they're up for it, I'd absolutely love to have them.
Yeah, maybe we bring out that car that you used to listen to the garage music in onto the stage. That's something that we could do, right? What was it?
It's the mint green Volkswagen Polo with the rims and the sound system. If I could roll onto stage with Luck and Neat and Majestic,
Oh my word!
DJ EZ pulling the strings, that's worth your tenner, isn't it?
It's been fun today.
Oh, I enjoyed it. Cheers, lads.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hi there, I'm Stefan, and I'm just popping up to tell you about our gaming podcast, Press X to Continue. It features people like this.
Tonight on Press X to Continue.
I wouldn't mind a chip where I could speak more languages.
It's a different type of socialising, but right now, man, it's a godsend, mate.
If you play like sports and stuff, it's sort of in your nature to compete against each other.
Keanu Reeves, Dele Alli and Tom Grennan are just some of the people who've come through, and along with our regular panel, Press X to Continue is here to help you decide which games are worth playing, keep you up to date with new releases, and have some fun along the way.
It's called a social deduction game, but I think it's a social destruction game.
My current Warzone team, we're called the Winky Boys.
I was known as the Sexy G.
Winky's been sent to the gulag.
So come and find us. Search for Press X to Continue and listen only on BBC Sounds. 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 On BBC